Have you ever wondered how someone who has always been considered a good person can suddenly take actions that shock everyone? How can a lifetime of kindness and integrity turn into a trail of questionable choices? It's easy to believe that good people never change, but reality is far more complex than it seems. And the most unsettling truth is that no one is completely immune to this transformation. In this video, you will discover how this change happens, what really leads someone to betray their values, and whether this reality could one day knock on your door. Stay with me until the end to understand what even movies fail to show about human nature. The true paradox of the good person is subscribe. Stay with me until the end to understand what even movies fail to show about human nature. The true paradox of the good person is about to be revealed. And don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel, because here, we bring daily content who they are. However, this goodness can be put to the test and challenge someone with such solid principles start acting in an unexpected they are. However, this goodness leads to the image of being someone with such solid principles start acting in an unexpected way. This goodness requires constant cultivation, but it does not always withstand the pressures of life. Judgment from others and the expectation of perfection can push someone into a cycle of guilt and know what is best. At its core, being good involves recognizing and dealing with one's own shadows, yet many prefer to their weaknesses. That slowly leads to the image of being good. The greater the risk of crises, or feel suffocated by emotional demands, they end up reaching such an extreme state of exhaustion that they start acting in ways they no longer recognize. Imagine, for example, someone who, year after year, dedicates themselves to caring for others without receiving proper support or recognition. This accumulation of tensions and frustrations can fuel a silent resentment. Over time, this emotional burden becomes of right and wrong. The first no, when someone who if left unhealed, turns into bitterness, and eventually, distrust. Little by little, the good person becomes more rigid, more defensive. The pain of the past starts guiding their decisions, and the kindness that once defined them gives way to an increasingly cold and distant demeanor. And we cannot ignore how accumulated frustration can intensify this change. As a person faces failures or feels that their efforts go unrecognized, resentment builds up. If not channeled in a healthy way, this resentment starts to distort their worldview and self-perception, altering values that once seemed unquestionable. It's as if each small disappointment slowly erodes their essence. The person who once found meaning in helping others now begins to wonder if they should only think of themselves. After all, how many times have they been left behind? The human mind also finds ways to protect itself from pain. And one of those ways is by creating internal justifications for behaviors that, under different circumstances, would seem inappropriate. When stress and resentment accumulate, a person begins to rationalize their negative act, doing what needs to be done to protect themselves. Resolved emotions, painful experiences, and psychological pressures that slowly alter their mental and emotional state. Their weaknesses can intensify to the point where this person becomes unrecognizable, even to themselves. The question that remains is, will they ever realize that they are drifting away from who they truly were? Environments, whether at work, within family, or in social circles, can function as emotional traps. In an office where people are constantly competing, someone who has always valued cooperation may feel they need to be more cunning to avoid being left behind. They begin to let go of small parts of their integrity, believing they are merely making adjustments to survive. But these adjustments are deceptive. Each influence involved in a group where questionable behaviors are normalized, there is a high chance that over time they will stop. To avoid feeling excluded or out of place, the individual begins to make small compromises. The transformation, they realize they no longer recognize themselves. In family settings, this influence can be even more intense and complex. A person who grew up in an environment where competition and comparison were constant tends to internalize those attitudes. Imagine someone who always felt pressured to be the best at any cost. Over time, this person may develop a distorted view of what is necessary to achieve success, including manipulative or selfish behaviors. In this case, the roots of wrongdoing did not stem from a conscious choice, but from a mental programming that has accompanied them since childhood. The power of the environment not only shapes, but can corrupt values almost imperceptibly. In communities or groups where this is one of the most common traps for those who attain positions of control. It is as if power creates a bubble, a distortion where the person no longer sees others as equals. They begin to see themselves as a judge, an authority, who, in order to ensure order or the greater good, can act arbitrarily. Throughout history, we have countless examples of how power changes behaviors. Apart, for example, started his journey as a defender. Countless examples of how power changes behaviors. Great figures, once apart from the everyday reality of anyone who has ever experienced a small dose of power. The issue of power also involves a profound psychological aspect. Control. When someone gains control over a situation or others, it is common for them to feel increasingly tempted to expand that influence. The sensation of controlling others' destinies can become addictive, leading someone to cross moral boundaries that were once unquestionable. This person begins to justify their actions with the belief that they are simply doing what is necessary, and so, little by little, they drift further from what once defined them as good. Ultimately, power and control bring a constant moral challenge: how not to be corrupted by the innately reflect on the impact of their choices and the limits they are willing to cross. The greatest risk here is that, in trying to maintain their position of authority, they may end up becoming exactly what they once vowed to fight against. What do you think? Do you believe that someone, upon gaining power, can truly maintain their values and kindness intact? When a person starts straying from the values they once considered unshakable, one of the mind's first strategies is to seek internal justifications for these deviations. After all, no defense mechanism was once unwillingly tempted to expand that influence. The sensation of controlling others' destinies can become addictive, leading someone to cross moral boundaries that were once unquestionable. This person begins to justify their actions with the belief that they are simply doing what is necessary, and for their own good, or, I'm doing this, they are somehow contributing. Creates an illusion of morality, where the true impact of their actions is obscured by a distorted perception of what is right. And here comes cognitive dissonance. Ultimately reflect on the impact of their choices and the limits they are willing to cross, doing exactly what they once vowed to fight against. Lying, and when a person starts straying from the values they once considered unshakable, one of the mind's first strategies is to seek internal justifications arise not only to, even when, at times, that image is merely a convenient mask. The more justifications someone for defense mechanism that protects self-esteem and self-image. This rationalization process may seem subtle at first, but it can slowly transform someone, making what was once unthinkable seem necessary. The concept of the greater good is another powerful tool for self-realizing they are shaping a new for their own good, or, I'm doing this because it's the right thing, they are somehow contributing positively. In the end, this self-justification is like an invisible trail, leading a person on creates an illusion of morality, where the true impact of their actions is obscured by a distorted perception of what is right. And here comes cognitive fear. Thus, when making a question, lying in small situations, internal justifications arise not only to ease guilt, but all, even when, at times, realizing they are shaping a new version of themselves, shadow hidden, instead of dealing with it, may cause the person to be guided by it, unconsciously. Jung also said, "He who looks outside, dreams. He who looks inside, awakens." This teaching is an invitation to reflection. Those who ignore the gray zone of their own morality may end up lost in a cycle of self-sabotage, repeating actions that take them further from their integrity. On the other hand, those who are willing to face more authentic morality, understanding that true goodness requires accepting one's full humanity, both strengths and self, where we all more authentic morality, understanding that true goodness requires accepting one's full humanity, both strengths and weaknesses. Thus, the gray zone of morality is where we all from guiding us unconsciously. But are we each truly willing to face our own shadows from guiding us unconsciously? But are we each truly willing to face our own shadow and accept this complexity? Or will we continue wandering through the world, chasing an illusory perfection that, in the end, may lead us to actions we never imagined we would take? Self-knowledge is an essential practice for staying true to one's values and principles, with external influence that helps them resist the temptation to give in to impulses or behaviors that contradict their morality. However, this process affection that self-reflection, in practice with external influence at the end of each day, whether the actions taken aligned with the values one holds most dear. This reflection can reveal hidden motivations and alert us to moments when we are drifting away from our true selves. Often, in the rush of everyday life, we lose sight of what truly matters, and self-reflection helps bring it back into focus. Jung offers us a powerful key on this path with his famous words, "He who looks outside, dreams. He who looks inside, awakens." This awakening he speaks of is the ability to develop an active consciousness, where choices stop being automatic reactions and become deliberate decisions. By practicing self-knowledge, a person awakens to their true self, understanding contradictions and accepting imperfections without allowing them to lead them away from their moral convictions. This process makes them less vulnerable to external influences and more focused on an authentic and lasting morality. Self-reflection also strengthens the ability to admit and correct mistakes. Everyone, at some point, makes decisions they later regret or realize were misaligned with their values. Instead of ignoring these missteps or seeking justifications, a person who practices self-knowledge learns to use them as opportunities for growth. They ask themselves, what can I learn from this? How can I act differently next time? This exercise not only helps maintain moral integrity, but also prevents mistakes from being repeated, reinforcing ethical resilience. For those seeking to uphold their values in a world that constantly challenges morality, self-knowledge serves as a reliable guide. It provides the ability to distinguish between fleeting impulses and true principles. Over time, this practice becomes a shield against negative influences, allowing one to make decisions that reflect their true essence, rather than external expectations or momentary desires. The final question is, are we ready for the challenge of looking inward and embarking on this journey of self-discovery? Contrary to what many might think, this is a continuous process that requires constant effort. However, those who commit to this path find not only a stronger sense of morality, but also a life more aligned with their true identity. Throughout this video, we have explored how goodness is not an unshakable guarantee, and that even the most upright person may be challenged to confront their shadows. From emotional pressures to the influence of power and societal expectations, each element contributes to the paradox of the good person, a constant dance between who we